This is Jonathan Karras here, partner and CTO at Lionschain Capital, a long-short crypto hedge fund. I'm going to be going over the framework for investment contract analysis of digital assets. I'm going to use as a litmus test my fictitious ICO, Hamster Coin, the decentralized marketplace for buying and selling hamsters, completely unrelated to the actual Hamster Coin, which I have no idea what this is, but I saw this when I just Googled it. Okay, introduction. If you are considering an initial coin offering, sometimes referred to as an ICO, or otherwise engaging in the offer, sale, or distribution of a digital asset, you need to consider whether the U.S. federal security laws apply. A threshold issue is whether the digital asset is a security under those laws. The term security includes an investment contract as well as other instruments such as stocks, bonds, and transferable shares. A digital asset should be analyzed to determine whether it has the characteristics of any product that meets the definition of security under the federal securities laws. In this guidance, we provide a framework for analyzing whether a digital asset has the characteristics of one particular type of security, an investment contract. Both the Commission and the federal courts frequently use the investment contract analysis to determine whether unique or novel instruments or arrangements, such as digital assets, are securities subject to the federal securities laws. The U.S. Supreme Court the U.S. Supreme Court's Howey case and subsequent case law have found that an investment contract exists when there is the investment of money in a common enterprise with a reasonable expectation of profits to be derived from the efforts of others. The so-called Howey test applies to any contract, scheme, or transaction regardless of whether it has any of the characteristics of typical securities. The focus of the Howey test analysis is not only on the form and terms of the instrument itself, in this case, the hamster coin, but also on the circumstances surrounding the digital assets and manner in which it is offered, sold, or resold, which includes secondary market sales, selling on exchanges. Therefore, issuers and other persons and entities engaged in the marketing, offer, sale, resale, and distribution of any digital asset will need to analyze the relevant transactions to determine if the federal security laws apply. The federal securities laws require all offers and sales of securities, including those involving a digital asset, to either be registered under its provisions or to qualify for an exemption from registration. The registration provisions require persons to disclose certain information to investors, and that information must be complete and not materially misleading. This requirement for disclosure furthers the federal securities law furthers the federal securities law's goal of providing investors with the information necessary to make informed investment decisions. Among the information that must be disclosed is information relating to the essential managerial efforts that affect the success of the enterprise. This is true in the case of a corporation, for example, but might also be true for other types of enterprises regardless of their organizational structure or form. For example, the Hamster DAO, the decentralized autonomous organization managing the buying and selling of hamsters. Absent the disclosures required by law about those efforts and the progress and prospects of the enterprise, significant information asymmetries may exist between the management and promoters of the enterprise on one hand, and the investors and prospective investors on the other hand. The reduction of these information asymmetries through required disclosures protects investors and is one of the primary purposes of the federal securities laws. Part 2. Application of Howey to digital assets. In this guidance, we provide a framework for analyzing whether a digital asset is an investment contract and whether offers and sales of a digital asset are security transactions. As noted above, under the Howey test, an investment contract exists when there is the investment of money in a common enterprise with a reasonable expectation of profits to be derived from the efforts of others. Whether a particular digital asset at the time of its offer or sale satisfies the Howey test depends on the specific facts and circumstances. We address each of the elements of the Howey test below. A. The investment of money. The first prong of the Howey test is typically satisfied in an offer and sale of a digital asset because the digital asset is purchased or otherwise acquired in exchange for value, whether in the form of real or fiat currency, another digital asset, or other type of consideration. So with our fictitious ICO, Hamster Coin, so we collected ETH and Bitcoin, and Bitcoin SV and Tron, and we gave out hamster coins, hamster tokens in exchange for that. So that seems suspect here. Second, common enterprise. Courts generally have analyzed a common enterprise as a distinct element of an investment contract. In evaluating digital assets, we have found that a common enterprise typically exists. C. Reasonable expectation of profits derived from efforts of others. Usually the main issue in analyzing a digital asset under the Howey test is whether a purchaser has a reasonable expectation of profits or other financial returns derived from the efforts of others. A purchaser may expect to realize a return through participating in distributions or through other methods of realizing appreciation on the asset, such as selling at a gain in a secondary market. When a promoter, sponsor, a third party, or affiliated group of third parties, each an active participant or AP, provides essential managerial efforts that affect the success of the enterprise, and investors reasonably expect to derive profits from those efforts, then this prong of the test is met. So in our ICO, when we announced that people would have massive gains when they bought the Hamster Coin, that was probably a mistake. Relevant to this inquiry is the economic reality of the transaction and what character the instrument is given in commerce by the terms of the offer, the plan of distribution, and the economic inducements held out to the prospect. The inquiry, therefore, is an objective one, focused on the transaction itself and the manner in which the digital asset is offered and sold. The following characteristics are especially relevant in an analysis of whether the third prong of the Howey test is satisfied. Number 1, reliance on the efforts of others. The inquiry into whether a purchaser is relying on the efforts of others focuses into 2 key issues. Does the purchaser reasonably expect to rely on the efforts of an AP? Are those efforts the undeniably significant ones, those essential managerial efforts which affect the failure or success of the enterprise, as opposed to the efforts that are more ministerial in nature? Although no one of the following characteristics is necessarily determinative, the stronger their presence, the more likely it is that a purchaser of a digital asset is relying on the efforts of others. The first bullet point, an AP is responsible for the development, improvement, or enhancement, operation, or promotion of the network, particularly if purchasers of the digital asset expect an AP to be performing or overseeing tasks that are necessary for the network or digital asset to achieve or retain its intended purpose or functionality. So if there's a core dev team, the core hamster dev team, if they're the ones that are building the product, then it probably was a security. Where the network or the digital asset is still in development and the network or digital asset is not fully functional at the time of the offer or sale, purchasers would reasonably expect an AP to further develop the functionality of the network or digital asset directly or indirectly. This particularly would be the case where an AP promises further developmental efforts in order for the digital asset to attain or grow in value. So when we sold Hamster Coins, we promised the investors that we would use that money to further development. So it's probably a security. Next bullet point, there are essential tasks or responsibilities performed and expected to be performed by an AP rather than unaffiliated dispersed community and network users, commonly known as a decentralized network. So let's say we have to run the back end and we have to get people to sign up and take pictures of their hamsters and post it on the network and download our hamster wallet. Next bullet point. An AP creates or supports a market for or the price of the digital asset. This can include, for example, an AP that controls the creation and issuance of the digital asset. Well, we did issue the hamster token. Or 2, takes other actions to support a market price of the digital asset, such as by limiting supply, ensuring scarcity, through, for example, buybacks, burning, or other activities. So every time on the hamster network, every time that a transaction went through, we took some of the profits from that and we bought back hamster coins off of the network, off of public exchanges, and we burned them. So that was probably a security. Next, an AP has a lead or central role in the direction of the ongoing development of the network or the digital asset. In particular, an AP plays a lead or central role in deciding governance issues, code updates, or how third-party participants in the validation of transactions that occur with respect to the digital asset. So one of the interesting aspects of Hamster Coin is that it uses proof of hamster. It actually has application-specific mining rigs that are powered by the little wheels in hamster cages, and the hamster network determines the distribution of those mining rigs, so that shows that it probably was a security. An AP has a continuing managerial role in making decisions about or exercising judgment concerning the network or the characteristics or rights the digital asset represents, including, for example, determining whether and how to compensate persons providing services to the network or to the entity or entities charged with overseeing the network. So, as the leader of Hamster Coin, I have to pay my employees, and I use some of the funds, so I control the treasury. That's probably a security. Determining whether and where the digital asset will trade. For example, purchasers may reasonably rely on an AP for liquidity, such as where the AP has arranged or promised to arrange for the trading of the digital asset on a secondary market or platform. So we at Hamster Coin are pushing very hard to get listed on Binance and Coinbase. Coinbase is very interested in Hamster Coin, and we express that to our investors in the ICO, probably security. Determining who will receive additional digital assets and under what conditions. So determining who's the validators, how are they validating, and what are the issuance. So probably security. Making or contributing to managerial level business decisions, just such as how to deploy funds raised from sales of the digital assets. So our Facebook ad campaign, things like that. Playing a leading role in the validation or confirmation of transactions on the network. We get into this specifically. Again, we've got the proof of hamster and deciding how that works. Having responsibility for the ongoing security of the network. So that means we probably control it. Making other managerial judgments or decisions that will directly or indirectly impact the success of the network or the value of the digital asset generally. Next, purchasers would reasonably expect the AP to undertake efforts to promote its own interests and enhance the value of the network or digital asset, such as where the AP has the ability to realize capital appreciation from the value of the digital asset. This can be demonstrated, for example, if the AP retains a stake or interest in the digital asset. In these instances, purchasers would reasonably expect the AP to undertake efforts to promote its own interests and enhance the value of the network or digital asset. So we at Hamster Coin own 49% of the tokens, so it's probably a security. And we're using the future sale of those tokens to continue the software development and decide the roadmap, probably a security. The AP distributes the digital asset as compensation to management, or the AP's compensation is tied to the price of the digital asset in the secondary market. To the extent that these facts are present, the compensated individuals can be expected to take steps to build the value of the digital asset. So all the founders and the employees and the advisors all received hamster coins, so it's probably a security. The AP owns or controls ownership of intellectual property rights of the network or digital asset directly or indirectly. We actually patented proof of hamster, and we will, if anybody forks it, then we will sue them, so it's probably a security. The AP monetizes the value of the digital asset, especially where the digital asset has limited functionality. Next, in evaluating whether a digital asset previously sold as a security should be reevaluated at a time of later offers or sales, there would be additional considerations as they relate to the efforts of others, including but not limited to. This is interesting now. So this is the SEC saying that something could start as a security and then change to a utility. So let's see what they say. Whether or not the efforts of an AP, including any successor AP, continue to be important to the value of an investment of the digital asset. Whether the network on which the digital asset is to function operates in such a manner that purchasers would no longer reasonably expect an AP to carry out essential managerial or entrepreneurial efforts. Whether the efforts of an AP are no longer affecting the enterprise's success. So that's interesting. So if we get Hamster Network up and running, and we get the distribution of enough proof of hamster mining rigs up and running, and then, God forbid, the entire core hamster team gets hit by a bus, and the network really takes off, then it might not be a security anymore because it's not centrally owned. Next, number 2, reasonable expectations of profits. We're about halfway through. An evaluation of the digital asset should also consider whether there's a reasonable expectation of profits. Profits can be, among other things, capital appreciation resulting from the development of the initial investment or business enterprise, or a participation in earnings resulting from the use of purchasers' funds. Price appreciation resulting solely from external market forces, such as general inflationary trends or the economy impacting the supply and demand for an underlying asset, generally is not considered profit under the Howey test. So if the demand for hamster coins just goes up just because hamsters become the most popular pet all over the world, so that's less of an issue. Let's see how that plays out. The more the following characteristics are present, the more likely it is that there is reasonable expectation of profit. Okay. The digital asset gives the holder rights to share in the enterprise's income or profits, or to realize gain from the capital appreciation of the digital asset. What does that mean? The opportunity may result from appreciation in the value of the digital asset that comes, at least in part, from the operation, promotion, improvement, or other positive developments in the network, particularly if there is a secondary trading market that enables digital asset holders to resell their digital assets and realize gains. This also can be the case where the digital asset gives the holders rights to dividends or distributions. So, for example, if we give a percentage of the profits of all sales done in the Hamster network to Hamster Coin holders, that's a problem. That's a reasonable expectation of profit. Next, the digital asset is transferable or tradable in or through a secondary market or platform, or is expected to be in the future. So during the ICO, I promised that we'd be on Coinbase, so that is a reasonable expectation of future profit. Next, purchasers reasonably would expect that an AP's efforts will result in capital appreciation of the digital asset and therefore be able to earn a return on their purchase. The digital asset is offered broadly to potential purchasers as compared to being targeted to expected users of the goods or services or those who have a need for the functionality of the network. So if I'm selling to everybody and their cousin, a whole bunch of people that have zero interest in ever actually owning a hamster or selling a hamster, so that is more likely that I'm selling it as an investment, as opposed to if I go specifically after just people interested in buying and selling hamsters. Next, the digital asset is offered and purchased in quantities indicative of investment intent instead of quantities indicative of a user of the network. For example, it is offered and purchased in quantities significantly greater than any likely user would reasonably need, or so small as to make actual use of the asset in the network impractical. So if a person is purchasing a fraction of a hamster, or they're purchasing millions of hamster coins, they're probably not using it to use. They're probably not purchasing it to actually participate in the buying and selling of hamsters. They're probably just purchasing it so that they can make money. Next, there's little apparent correlation between the purchase offering price of the digital asset and the market price of the particular goods or services that can be acquired in exchange for the digital asset. So if Hamster Coin has a market cap of $10 billion and that significantly overstates the entire non-blockchain related hamster market, then it's most likely that the market cap is just related to the speculative element, and it's a security. It's not actually a utility to help enable trade of hamsters. Next, there's little apparent correlation between the quantities of digital assets typically traded in, or the amounts that purchasers typically purchase, and the amount of the underlying goods or services a typical consumer would purchase for use or consumption. Kind of reiterates what we said before. Nobody's buying 1 million hamsters. Nobody's buying 1/10 of a hamster. Those are things that people do with securities as an investment. The AP has raised an amount of funds in excess of what may be needed to establish a functional network or digital asset. I bet I could build a hamster network for, I don't know, let's say 100K, including marketing, multiple networks, 500K. If I'm raising $50 million for Hamster Coin, it probably was not for just building the network. It probably was because people viewed it as a speculative investment. The AP is able to benefit from its efforts as a result of holding the same class of digital assets as those being distributed to the public. So as the founder of Hamster Coin, I was able to hold 49% of the tokens, and I'm never going to use those to buy actual little furry creatures. So I probably, even from my mind as the founder, it's just a security. Next. The AP continues to expend funds from proceeds or operations to enhance the functionality or value of the network or digital asset. So I use the money, the Bitcoin and Ethereum and Tron and whatnot, to make the hamster trading platform better, and the hamster DEX better, and the hamster wallet and the proof of hamster mining rig better. So those means it probably was a security. Or at least there was, as we said the title of this section, reasonable expectations of profits. Okay. The lost my place. Sorry. We said here the AP has raised an amount of funds in excess of what may be needed to establish a functional network or digital asset. The AP is able to benefit from its efforts as a result of holding the same class of digital assets of those being distributed to the public. The AP continues to expend funds from the proceeds or operations to enhance the functionality or value of the network of the or digital asset. And the digital asset is marketed directly or indirectly using any of the following: the expertise of an AP or its ability to build or grow the value of the network or digital asset. So I know how to make tokens Lambo to the moon. So that means you're probably expecting my work is going to cause you significant gains. The digital asset is marketed in terms that indicate it is an investment or that the solicited holders are investors. So when I did the Hamster Coin ICO, I told everybody that I had said thank you to my investors and said this is going to be the best investment of your lifetime. Probably shouldn't have said that. Again, Hamster Coin is just a fictitious marketplace for buying and selling hamsters, has no relation to anything that exists in the real world. Okay. The intended use of the proceeds from the sale or digital asset is to develop the network or digital asset, the future and not present functionality of the network or digital asset, and the prospect that an AP will deliver that functionality. So you expect that my hard work is going to make your hamster coin valuable. The promise, implied or explicit, to build a business or operation as opposed to delivering currently available goods or services for use on an existing network. So if so let's say another example. Let's say that I just raised a farm of hamsters. I had 1 million hamsters in my backyard, and I sold 1 million hamster tokens and then said that you could today redeem your hamster token for one of my awesome hamsters. And we actually do. I have my kids have some Syrian dwarf hamsters. They're very adorable and they breed like crazy. So we probably could end up with 1 million of them in our house if left unchecked. But so if you could trade immediately 1 coin for 1 hamster, so that's not reasonable expectation of profit. Next, the ready transferability of the digital asset is a key selling feature. Interesting. So we're saying here in this section, the digital asset is marketed directly or indirectly using any of the following, including the ready transferability of the digital asset is a key selling feature. So people are buying hamster coins because they know that there's a big secondary market for it. Next, the potential profitability of the operations of the network or the potential appreciation in the value of the digital asset is emphasized in marketing or other promotional materials. So when I had those cute pictures of hamsters in Lamborghinis, I just can't help myself, Lamborghini. Let's see what Google comes up with. So if I had pictures of hamsters and Lamborghinis on the moon, okay, not bad. There's some hamsters and Lamborghinis. That implied that participants in the Hamster Coin network were going to receive significant gains. That was not a good thing to do. The availability of a market for the trading of the digital asset, particularly where the AP implicitly or explicitly promises to create or otherwise support a trading market for the digital asset. So when I promised the hamster DEX, the decentralized exchange for trading hamster coin, where there were lots of trading pairs, like let's say similar to Uniswap or Bancor, and you can instantly trade your hamster coin for Tron or EOS or Bitcoin SV. That implies that there was reasonable expectation of profits. Okay, in evaluating whether a digital asset previously sold as a security should be reevaluated at the time of later offers or sales, there would be additional considerations as they relate to the reasonable expectations of profits, including but not limited to. So this is great. This is again where we get to the point where you started as a security, but now you are a utility. So let's see in terms of reasonable expectation of profits. Number one, purchasers of the digital asset no longer reasonably expect the continued development efforts of the core Hamster Coin development team will be a key factor for determining the value of the digital asset. Number two, the value of the digital asset has shown a direct and stable correlation to the value of the good or service for which it may be exchanged or redeemed. You know what? The price on hamster decks of a hamster coin is actually very similar to the price that you'd get at a pet store. The trading volume for the digital asset corresponds to the level of demand for the good or service for which it may be exchanged or redeemed. Whether holders are then able to use the digital asset for its intended functionality, such as to acquire hamsters, goods or services, on or through the network or platform. So if it actually just becomes a good website where it's like coupons for buying hamsters, that there's no reasonable expectation of profit. Whether any economic benefit that may be derived from appreciation in the value of the digital asset is incidental to obtaining the right to use it for its intended functionality. So it could be that you just bought, 50 hamster coins because you really like hamsters, and then there was just like this massive demand for hamsters in the world. Like it turns out that like hamster, I don't know, I don't want to hurt the hamsters. Let's say hamster wheels somehow can generate a massive amount of electricity that was unknown previously. And so now everybody wants hamsters, and the price has gone up 10,000x. So that had nothing to do with my proof of hamster patent or my hamster exchange or my hamster network. Whether any economic benefit that may be derived from the appreciation and the value of the digital asset is incidental to obtaining the right to use it for its intended functionality. Next, no AP has access to material non-public information or could otherwise be deemed to hold material inside information about the digital asset. Yep, the whole APs have gone. They now live on an island off the coast of Phuket in Thailand. It's a beautiful place you should go visit. And it's full of hamsters. It's called Hamster Island. And the network just kind of runs itself. It's open source code. There's on-chain governance. And it's just running by itself. So nobody on Hamster Island has any access to any material. They don't even have internet there. Number three, other relevant considerations. When assessing whether there is a reasonable expectation of profit derived from the efforts of others, federal courts look to the economic reality of the transaction. In doing so, the courts have also considered whether the instrument is offered and sold for use or consumption by purchasers. Although no one of the following characteristics of use or consumption is necessarily determinative, the stronger their presence, the less likely the Howey test is met. Okay, great. So let's try and see if we can reinvent Hamster Coin. Again, not related to any real life thing, just a made up ICO about a hamster market. Let's see if we can do it not being a security. The distributed ledger network and digital asset are fully developed and operational. So we didn't sell anything. We didn't do anything until the network was up and running. Holders of the digital asset are immediately able to use it for its intended functionality in the network, particularly where there are built-in incentives and encourages to encourage such use. So you can actually on day one buy hamsters. Next, the digital asset's creation and structure is designed and implemented to meet the needs of its users, rather than to feed speculation as to its value or development of its network. For example, the digital asset can only be used on the network and generally can be held or transferred only in amounts that correspond to a purchaser's expected use. So meaning we didn't make the hamster coin, it's not an ERC20 token, it's not compatible on any other network. We don't even offer the hamster decks. And the only thing that you can do with the hamster coin is buy hamsters or earn it through selling hamsters. Next. Prospects for appreciation and the value of the digital asset are limited. For example, the design of the digital asset provides that its value will remain constant or even degrade over time, and therefore a reasonable purchaser would not be expected to hold the digital asset for extended periods of time as an investment. So, for example, we could even say that maybe hamster coins, every coin has an expiration date on it. So you need to either use it to redeem for a hamster or it's going to expire and it will no longer be fungible. It's one example. I'm sure we could come up with others. With respect to a digital asset referred to as a virtual currency, it can immediately be used to make payments in a wide variety of contexts or act as a substitute for real or fiat currency. I don't think this is really relevant for the hamster network, unless maybe on Hamster Island. This means that it is possible to pay for goods or services with the digital asset without first having to convert it to another digital asset or real currency. If it is characterized as a virtual currency, the digital asset actually operates as a store of value that can be saved, retrieved, and exchanged for something of value at a later time. With respect to a digital asset that represents rights to a good or service, it currently, like hamsters, it currently can be redeemed within a developed network or platform to acquire or otherwise use those goods or services. Relevant factors may include: there is a correlation between the purchase price of the digital asset and a market price of the particular good or service for which it may be redeemed or exchanged. So the price of one hamster coin roughly reflects the market value of one hamster. The digital asset is available in increments that correlate with consumptive intent versus an investment or speculative purposes. The digital asset is available in increments that correlate with a consumptive intent versus an investment or speculative purposes. So nobody's buying half a hamster, so that means that you can't buy and sell half hamster coins. An intent to consume the digital asset may also be more evident if the good or service underlying the digital asset can only be acquired or more efficiently acquired through the use of the digital asset on the network. So the way that you get hamster coins is you raise hamsters and you sell them getting hamster coins, and the way you buy hamsters is you take your hamster coins and you sell them in the market to get other hamster coins. It could be that you've got a certain type of hamster that I want and I have a hamster that you want, and we use the hamster coin network in order to ease those exchanges. Any economic benefit that may be derived from the appreciation in the value of the digital asset is incidental to obtaining the right to use it for its intended functionality. Again, magically the price of hamsters go up, so then therefore the price of hamster coins would go up as well. Next, the digital asset is marketed in a manner that emphasizes the functionality of the digital asset and not the potential for the increase in market value of the digital asset. So let's see what this says here again. The digital asset is marketed in a manner that emphasizes the functionality of the digital asset. So we said this is not the investment of a lifetime. You should buy hamster coin only if you are a big hamster fan and you want to just have lots of different types of hamsters. The potential purchasers have the ability to use the network and use or have used the digital asset for its intended functionality. Right? Restrictions on the transferability of the digital asset are consistent with the asset's use and not facilitating a speculative market. So we don't help people trade hamster coins for other things. Next, if the AP facilitates the creation of a secondary market, transfers of the digital asset may only be made by and among users of the platform. So if you want to trade on the hamster DEX, you have to sign up with your hamster network account. All right, next, and we're almost done, digital assets with these types of use or consumption characteristics are less likely to be investment contracts. For example, take the case of an online retailer with a fully developed operating business. The retailer creates a digital asset to be used by consumers to purchase products only on the retailer's network, offers the digital asset for sale in exchange for real currency, and the digital asset is redeemable for products consumerly priced in that real currency. So give me $10, I will give you 10 hamster coins, and you can redeem that for 10 hamsters later. The retailer continues to market its products to its existing customer base and advertises a digital asset payment method as part of those efforts, and may reward customers with digital assets based on product purchases. So for example, after your 10th hamster purchase, you get one extra hamster coin. So it's like a free hamster. Upon receipt of the digital asset, consumers immediately are able to purchase products on the network using the digital asset. The digital assets are non-transferable. Rather, consumers can only use them to purchase products from the retailer or sell them back to the retailer at a discount to the original purchase price. That's interesting. You can sell them back to the retailer at a discount to the original purchase price. Under these facts, the digital asset would not be an investment contract. Interesting. Okay, so this means that you could buy for $1 the digital asset from me, but then you could sell it back to me at 50 cents. Interesting. Under these facts, the digital asset would not be an investment contract. Next, even in cases where a digital asset can be used to purchase goods or services on a network, where the network's or digital asset's functionality is being developed or improved, there may be securities transactions if, among other factors, the following is present. The digital asset is offered or sold to purchasers at a discount to the value of the goods or services. Okay. The digital asset is offered or sold to purchasers at a discount to the value of the goods or services. So that means I charge $2 for a hamster or one hamster coin, and you can get a hamster coin for $1. So then the digital asset is being offered or sold to purchasers at a discount to the value of the goods or services. Why would this be true? Even in cases where a digital asset can be used to purchase goods or services on a network, where that network's or digital asset's functionality is being developed or improved, there may be security transactions if, among other factors, the following is present. The digital asset is offered or sold to purchasers at a discount to the value of the goods or services. The digital asset is offered or sold to purchasers in quantities that exceed reasonable use. And, or, there are limited or no restrictions on reselling those digital assets, particularly where an AP is continuing in its efforts to increase the value of the digital assets or has facilitated a secondary market. So creating trading pairs on hamster decks and allowing people to easily move 1 million hamster coins a day can still make it a security, even if you can always exchange one hamster for one hamster coin. Oh, we're at the end. So that wasn't so bad. Conclusion. The discussion above identifies some of the factors market participants should consider in assessing whether a digital asset is offered or sold as an investment contract and therefore is a security. It also identifies some of the factors to be considered in determining whether and when a digital asset may no longer be a security. These factors are not intended to be exhaustive in evaluating whether a digital asset is an investment contract or any type of security, and no single factor is determinative. Rather, we are providing them to assist those. Sorry, I got a phone call. Distracted. It's election season, so there's a lot of random phone calls going on. Let's start at the top. Conclusion. The discussion above identifies some of the factors market participants should consider in assessing whether a digital asset is offered or sold as an investment contract, and therefore is a security. It also identifies some of the factors to be considered in determining whether and when a digital asset may no longer be a security. These factors are not intended to be exhaustive in evaluating whether a digital asset is an investment contract or any other type of security, and no single factor is determinative. Rather, we are providing them to assist those engaging in the offer, sale, or distribution of a digital asset, and their counsel, as they consider these issues. We encourage market participants to seek the advice of Securities Counsel and engage with the staff through www.sec.gov/FinHub. Thank you. There's some, I'm not going to read this stuff. All right, guys, thanks for sticking with me and going through this whole thing. I hope that added some clarity if you are building something. And again, Hamster Coin is just an example that I made up because I thought it sounded funny. No real intention for ICO and nothing related to anything in the real world, even something of a similar name.